Okay, hello everyone. I'm going to open the webinar. This is Linda Vignac from SIETAR France, and I'm very happy this evening to be the moderator for the Intergenerational Mastery for M&As webinar by two of my SIETAR France colleagues, Manuela Marquis and Mithun Mridha. Before we begin, I would like to just tell you that this is being recorded, and to remind you, if you haven't worked on Zoom before, that if you have questions or any kind of exchange, anything you want to let me know, you have the chat box, which is little dialogue balloon on the bottom of your screen. We will be using the poll function tonight and asking for your contribution. After that, I am really happy to introduce Manuela and Mithun, who are going to talk to you about mergers and acquisitions and how to get the best out of the merger of people, processes, and plans. Manuela is an ICF coach, passionate about human relations and international relations. And she accompanies change in multicultural organizations to increase performance and boost talents. Mithun is a project portfolio manager, intercultural enthusiast, leadership speaker, and he serves multinationals in multiple sectors, and has taught project management and intercultural management here in Paris at Dauphine, ESCA, EM Normandy, and FU Berlin, and he is with us tonight from Bogota. So I'm going to turn over to them. I will be turning my camera off and my microphone off, and I say, go guys, go.
Thank you very much, Linda, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you, thank you. Hello, everybody. Good day, good evening. I don't know wherever you are in this world, but it's a pleasure to spend the next hour with you. Intergenerational Mastery for M&As, building the bridge as you walk. That's our subject for the upcoming time. Now, why did we choose this subject? That is one question. For myself, I'm coach, and I'm accompanying managers and companies, working with them on change management, and the most challenging is actually M&A. So what about you, Mithun?
Hello, everyone. My experience has often involved restructuring and transformation of company-wide project portfolios and complex programs in pre- and post-M&A phases in a variety of sectors like pharmaceuticals, utilities, energy, investment banking. So for me, it's something I live on a day-to-day basis on my projects, and I feel that there's a lot of new problems created. There are lots of new best practices that come up, and there's always something new to live. And that's why it was very natural for me to choose this topic.
All right, let us see what we have planned for you for the upcoming hour. A couple of points which we like to share. We like to share with you the context of M&A, talking a little bit of generations which are concerned. Also talking about integration programs, and we have questions for you. So we'll see what you think about it. Also, we're gonna, oh, here we go. Yep, coaching across cultures. I'm gonna share with you the coaching side. Issues during M&As, what is coming up, and then we see what are the ways to ruin, fix, and build a constructive M&A. So there we have questions also for you coming up, and obviously at the end we have question and answers for you, and you tell us all about. Now, here we go. Little introduction. Mithun, tell us, what is M&A?
So, what basically a merger and acquisition is, it is a business alliance between two very different entities, two different organizations or two different companies, and they mostly have two objectives, either to have growth or to diversify. So these are the two major drivers that have been influencing companies to go for this kind of alliance. So what they really want is, in terms of growth, is they want to acquire new products, they want to acquire new markets, they want to acquire new customers, they want to acquire new technology, and they also want to acquire new supply chain management and new access to new places to operate the business. So what happens is that the profitability increased profitability is exactly proportional to the strategic potential of the deal. So it's very, very profitability oriented, and which goes towards long term. If I say there's a little difference between merger and acquisition. So what is a merger? It's a company A plus company B is equal to company C, plus company C is a completely new entity. Acquisition is A plus B equal to A. So A is acquiring B, but still remains A. So that's a basic difference between the two. There's very different kinds of mergers and acquisitions, and there is a constant change in the types of M&As which are happening. So Manuela, we also want to talk about different generations. So which generations do you want to talk about today?
Well, the generations which are upcoming, by 2030, 70% of the working population will be composed by generation Y and Z. So if you look at it, actually, the attitude is towards the career is completely changing. The digital and entrepreneurs work with organizations, which is the generation Y, yes. And they work with organization, but not for organization. So it is a complete different attitude. It is the aspiration for the generation Y is also, it is more freedom and flexibility. They do have a totally different aspiration, like the generation X before was more in work-life balance. Now, when we look at the generation of the Z, the millenniums, they are totally different now, because they have the career multitasking. They will move seamlessly between organization and pop-up businesses in their attitude, and they're more on security and stability. So the generations, yes, they do change completely. Now tell me a little bit about the economic side, Mithun.
We know that there are lots of transactions which are growing worldwide. Today we have a total of nearly $4,000 billion of transactions signed in 2018. So if you check the indicators, there are quite a few which are remarkable. The first one is there is a need for cost efficiency. Companies are more and more wanting to perform better with the same amount of costs that they have been using for their operations. There's a need for evolving business models. There's a lot of disruptive innovation from startups and large organizations. There's a fight for the same rare qualified resources or professionals, so they're fighting for the same market. There's a global reach with all the digital tools, and with that comes the global competition. There are many new technologies which are getting developed. and there's a long cycle of economic recession which has been ongoing, which is also changing the choices that companies have for M&A. And some things that companies are scared about about M&A is that it's about the customers. So customers will lose in pricing power. They will have reduced options because there will be less actors in the market. There is a fear about job loss or resizing of companies. There's a very increased challenge about organization because the size keeps growing, so the complexity keeps growing, and there's a major change in the economic dynamics of M&A. In the 1950s and 60s, M&As used to be very financial oriented, very short-term asset oriented, and current 21st century M&As are more operational, synergy oriented, long-term oriented. So what corporate myths do we have in this world, Manuela? Can you please share about it?
Sure, thanks. There are a lot actually, but when I started to work on the subject, I would like to share a couple, like let's say 5 with you, which are the most which we heard. One of the myths is we have to integrate our cultures. So the question should rather be addressed as what level of integration of the organization and their culture is required to realize the promised value of the merger. But yeah, integration is definitely a myth when we talk about them. And the second one would be also the smaller and or acquired company needs to adjust its culture to its acquirers. So that is obviously another myth where culture integration strategy is probably needed, but we're gonna see later on a little bit about it. The third myth is if both companies are of similar size, you should target a culture that is in the middle, which is, yeah, where's the focus? Where do you do it? The question, definitely. First one is you can change culture solely through communication about new rules. And this is definitely a myth. It's definitely more than communication or words. Leaders will need to demonstrate the change in their own actions, reward, obviously, people, change behaviors, and hold people who do not change accountable, or regularly convey the benefits of the changed mindsets and behavior. So another one which we heard a lot also is achieving financial target with results turns into a successful M&A. Well, numbers will not replace humans, so yeah, definitely that is a myth. Now, let us see. Little question for all of you. Linda, if you can help us. The question would be for everybody, what percentage of M&A fail? And we have, here we are.
Hi, everyone. Please just confirm that you see the poll on your screen. Yes, I see the answers coming in, so this is great. We have a question here, my friends. What can you define fail? So that might be interesting. I suppose when we get the answers, you'll be talking about that one. Do you think we're ready? Should I close it? What do you think? Do we pretty much have everybody here?
If you have, let's say 80% who have answered, that would be nice, yeah.
Okay. I think we have, all right, 70, 80, 20. Okay, it looks like we're at 100%. So I'm going to close it. And here you go. We have 36% that answered that it was 25 to 50%. We have 50 to 70% of the participants who answered that, I'm sorry, we have 40, excuse me, I'm turning my percentages around. 44% of our participants voted for, if you like, 50 to 70%, and 20% voted for the 70 to 90%. There. Can everyone see the results then?
Yeah, great. Right.
Okay.
Interesting. It's nearly 1/3 each. Nearly.
And we have someone who comments, I think more mergers fail than acquisitions, which is kind of a parallel. Should I go ahead and close this now?
Sure, yeah, thanks. That's definitely interesting because there you go, whereas 1/3 each, 36%, 25% to 50, and 44 for the middle. Actually, we based ourselves on the recent Harvard Business Research report, where the failure rate for merger and acquisitions is between 70 and 90%. So that brings up the last answer. There are a host of things that lead to failure, obviously. It could be financial losses, stock drops, loss of market opportunities, fizzled dreams. I mean, we're going to speak a little bit about it later on. I turn to you, Mithun.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk about how to implement integration program across generations. So one of the important action that any organization can take is that you have to manage it and manage any kind of integration, not as small initiatives a bit everywhere, but you have to have something global, something centralized, a corporate program, which is really having all the people around. It has a governance, it has people, it has instance, like a specific meeting. It's being communicated, it's in the center of the agenda of every level of management. So what you need to do to have a program, so the basic difference between projects and programs are projects have a specific objective, they have a specific start date, and they have a specific end date, they have a specific amount of resources they can use, they have to respect quality requirements, and they have to deliver what the client wants. So a program is a collection of several projects which all are interrelated. They contribute towards a global objective, and that's why for a integration program you need a complete program which is managed in a proper project management methodological way. So some things that you need with this program is you have to set up your integration toolbox. An integration toolbox consists of processes. So you need business processes, you need technical processes. So you have to describe, you have to define, you have to make the new processes, create ones for the new entity. Then you have to set up tools, you have to implement those tools, you have to train people to use those tools during the integration. And the last one is methods. You need methods. You have to define which method. There are lots of methods in the dictionaries, in project management books, but what you really need is a complete toolbox that you can use for one integration, you can use it for another integration. What happens for companies is that when they have a merger and acquisition once, they almost always have another one coming up. So it's good to make it professional, do it, have this toolbox around. Something else I wanted to talk to you about was the intercultural values-based approach to ensure fairness. So fairness is a very complex topic for different generations. for what is fair, the concept of fairness is very much linked to the social identity. And whenever you are merging organizations, you tend to lose this social identity, the feeling, the emotional attachment, also to the role that the person has. So you have to manage everything in a way that it stays fair. What is fair in one country may not be fair in another country, or accepted or perceived as fair in another country. And what is seen as fair by one generation is not seen as fair in another generation. So you have to ensure it at all levels. If you don't ensure fairness, you will not have the buy-in. If you don't have the buy-in of each level, each person contributing to this integration program, you are heading to a failure. So something that appears in all integration programs is resistance. So you have to manage resistance, because we as human beings, we never like change. So it's normal to be resistant to change, but change has to be dealt, it has to be communicated, it has to be taken care of by people who will be the change leaders, or they will be from different generations. They have to be involved in the whole organization from the start to end. Can you move to this next slide, Manuela, please? So, so this is kind of an example that I have taken from the Mergers and Acquisition Handbook, how to create a integration management office. So this is the corporate office, centralized office, which is managing the integration program, and you need all the departments to contribute. So every department is represented, and you have the decision makers. You can make the escalations to these decision makers, and you have each function or each department of your company represented. Something which is also comes as a best practice or suggestion is you should also have a culture management team. So this team should be also integrated into the integration management office. And this team decides about what is the current culture at each level of the company and what should be the future culture. Can you move to the next slide, Manuela? So what really needs to be done is you have to include the mosaic of all employees. So your integration management office needs to have people from each of the generations, otherwise they won't be included. They won't feel heard. They won't feel that their opinions are being heard and taken care of. Your governance should be set up as early as possible. You have to leverage differences between different generations into opportunities, because each generation acts and has a different way, different approach towards work. So you have to take this into consideration. And the last point I would like to say is something I took from the book M&A Tango by Fontenard and Martin. It's use scorecards for integration, and all the scorecards should include something called KRIs and not KPIs. KRIs are key reconciliation indicator. So reconciliation has to happen between all sides, between us, us and others. We are doing this way, they are doing that way. You will always have faced this contradiction in each level of integration, and you have to track reconciliation. So reconciliation is the key to success. So let's move to a question. What should be the ideal duration of an integration program? Can you please help Linda with the question?
Linda, are you?
Here we are. I'm here. I'm
Yeah.
here. Sorry. So here it goes. Can you see it? Question is, what
Yes.
should be the ideal duration of an integration program? People are answering, so we're doing just fine. Let's see. Give it a few minutes until it stops. It looks like maybe we have everybody.
Great.
So I'm ending it, and I'm going to show the results. Do you see them?
Yeah.
Yes, so we have 4% with less than 6 months, we have 21% for 6 to 12 months, 50% 12 to 24 months, and 29% opting for greater than 2 years. And I very much agree with the majority, 50% who chose 12 to 24 months. I feel that's a very good period of time. If it escalates, if it's too long, then people have more things to integrate. So the business processes evolve, and you have more complexity to deal with if it's too long. Also, the motivation drops down. So I have the best integrations I have seen are between 12 and 24 months. So let's move, and I let Manuela continue.
Yeah, because I would like to talk to you about coaching across cultures for the generations during M&A. Obviously, the timing is differently from the start to the end, and there are different kind of stages you go through. So when teams and other groups of people come together, they typically go through a number of development stages, and here you see 4 of them. You have norm, storm, transform, and perform. It is actually something which Bruce Truckman's group development, he brought it out in 65 already. And this is the progress, can take a few days or stretch over a much longer period. It can easily take 6 months for a team to settle down even more. A role of the manager obviously is different, or it could be an external facilitator, coach, or yeah, somebody from outside. In this progress, it is not to jump straight to perform, obviously, but
Manuela, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I have a message that your sound has gone down and it's a little bit difficult to hear you. Is there something you can do to maybe increase the volume on your end?
I try to speak up.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Don't worry, don't worry. This process, the 4 stages can take yeah, up to 6 months to a year, obviously. The role of the manager needs to adapt to each of the stages. It can be, as I said, by him as a manager, or an outside person, which is a facilitator or coach. He goes through these different kind of stages, where obviously norm is not like storm. Norm is more where everybody comes together and there's kind of honeymoon period, and the manager needs to get engaged with everybody. The storm side is as the initial politeness fades, people get to more into the work and their roles, and so to start to argue about things that were left. The manager here needs to assert their role and help draw out and resolve differences. Where else transform, manager, they process of norming and requires getting into putting in place people and work. Work will plan and proceed, the procedures are set, and in the end perform. Finally the steady state is achieved, and then team reaches and an optimal level, hopefully, of performance. Good team will feel like very happy family, and the manager however needs not to lay down and relax, but focus on the significant work which needs to be done to make people relate more and face well and focus on work to be done, where the performance comes hopefully there and then. That is about coaching. What about the cross-general issue? Mithun.
So I wanted to talk about the cross-generational issues. Each generation has a different approach to work. and this comes from the circumstances and the environment and the economic conditions in which each of the generations grew up. And this is not an exhaustive list of issues, but these are the most frequent issues that I have come across. The first one I feel is there is an issue about process orientation versus people orientation. So generations that are process oriented, they're very focused on respecting the processes as they are, getting the job done, following the steps from step 1 to step 10. Everything is focused on completion and staying correct, staying very clear with the completion of each task. And people who are, the generations who are people focused, they're more focused on relationship building, staying connected, co-creating, always being in a dialogue with each other. So this is one of the issues I found. Another issue is about job description. So you have a few generations where the job description needs to be extremely purpose oriented. It has to be clear, it has to be very explicit, and it has to be appealing to what the person is his or her desire is about. So this is about the newer generations. The older generations, they have a let's say the baby boomers or generation X, so they don't have this requirement, absolute requirement to be extremely purpose oriented in the job description. So they also sometimes are comfortable with ambiguous or incomplete roles because they think that that's a part of the job to accept what is being asked and do it. So that's so job descriptions are changing, and whenever you have a merger and acquisition, the roles are changing. You have some roles that last for a few months, and then they keep transitioning. So what is really important is to keep communicating that what is the role, how the role is evolving, and what will be the future role. Because if you don't take into consideration of the changing roles in your communication, it is a volcano which will keep it will erupt at some point of time, and it will cost you a lot in the integration process. Then another one point I found about long-term trust or loyalty versus transactional relationship in companies. So the long-term loyalty and trust, it comes from lifelong corporate benefits. So companies in the past, let's say 1940s, 50s, 60s, there was a lot of corporate benefits which was associated with the job, and companies would take care of employees in more complete manner compared to what it is today. So the modern generations are moving towards transactional employees. So transactional employees means what's in it for me? What would I get by doing this job? Why should I be the person doing it? So all these questions, you have to be very clear whenever you are dealing with the newer generation. Something I find about generations issues is also the ergonomy and the role of space. So the sense of well-being at work, it comes from ergonomy. How are the chairs, the screens, the setup, the coffee machine, and then the space, how the teams, at what distance are people located in from each other, where are they situated. So all the space is really responsible for connecting teams in the modern, especially for the generation Z or the millennials. It's extremely important, and you have to take into consideration. Something which is very interesting to observe is also the other generations are also evolving. They're also taking into consideration the ergonomy and the space needs of the newer generations. So with that, I let Manuela continue with the next point.
Which is a question, Mithun. What are the most frequent reasons for failure of M&A? Now, earlier on, we spoke about failure, which was 70 to 90%. Now, what would be the most frequent reasons for you? Linda, can you help us?
Yes, just 1 second here. I'm sorry. Sorry, there we go. It's up. Excuse me. Here we go. Oh, well. No one else wants to add. We started out with 100% for lack of clarity, and now it's kind of evening out as people are kind of, I guess, thinking it over, thinking in more detail. Are we ready? I think it looks like it's stable here. So I'm going to end it.
Go. Let us know.
Show the results. Have you got them?
Wow, yeah. 60 and lack of clarity 60 also. Okay. That makes 120%. Interesting. Okay, yeah, well, there is obviously external factors coming and changes to the business environment. These external factors could be like we had in 2009, global financial crisis. So that could be one. Our timing is not right. So that is the lack of clarity and execution and integration progress. Yeah, a major challenge for M&A deal is post-merger integration on crucial projects, products, processes, and matters. Technologies integration. I remember. I don't know if you remember, but eBay, who spent 2.6 billion in 2005 on Skype, and where they hoped they would increase sales on their platform. And finally, they found out that the technology at that time was still linked with the founder, Niklas Zennström, who maintained ownership, and that was definitely a technical integration problem for eBay that time. And then coming to corporate culture alignment and regional culture integration, definitely yes. It all comes down to what do we choose? Keep the values and management methods of the head office and transpose them to the subsidiaries, or to adapt 100% local values and practices, or another way could be to adjust the two cultures and create a new one. So definitely these are the main features. Now we have 7 mistakes which also come up to failure, which have to go to group, have the group headquarters to take all the decisions. That could be another reason to failure. Not communicating about the deal during ongoing negotiations, which creates obviously the rumors. Then you have not including younger generations in decision making, including values, which cannot be translated into actions and behaviors. Limited or no involvement from business owners. Theoretical evaluation versus practical, so difference between theory and practice. Propositions and a marketing strategy that works for one brand does not necessarily work for another one, or even miscommunication with all shareholders. So now, how do we fix them, Mithun? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so I have chosen 7 quick fixes. I think there could be, you can always add, and I think in the audience we have a lot of experienced people. We could always add more and more ways to fix them. The first one is really move the focus from the successful M&A deal to a long-term full integration. When you have done a successful deal, it's not the end of your M&A, it's just the beginning. So you have to think about long term. When do you achieve the full integration in all your processes, in all your activities, in all in the whole organization. So that's one important point that you can focus from the beginning. The second way to fix an M&A is to move to 100% bottom-up integration approach. So this is one of the best practices that came up from a lot of pharmaceutical companies. They're applying this approach. The idea is that they have some top-down communication regularly, decisions also in their integration management office, but the integration approach is always bottom up. It's always the regional entities, the regional teams that decide how to integrate the entities, and that way everyone is heard, and it helps to raise the level of trust between all the teams. The next way is to organize regular values workshops. So what is this kind of workshop about? You consistently assess the behaviors that are derived from your newly accepted values. You keep focusing on what is your target behavior that you want from the team members, and based on that, what value do you need behind what kind of value would give this kind of behavior. You have to decide on those values, and finally you need to agree upon all the teams of the integrated organization needs to accept which values will be chosen. I personally suggest you should not go over 3 values. 3 is a very good number, and 3 well accepted and well defined values. The next way is to set precise milestones in your integration program and then follow them up like a surgeon, very precisely. So precise milestones are important because that way you know where you are going, you know what to do next, and you are not lost in this next week we'll have more information syndrome, where people always think, oh, next week we'll have in 2 weeks we'll have a better idea, and that's very complicated way to follow an integration program which is very long term. The next quick fix is to set technology integration as a top priority, starting from the beginning of the integration. So you start with the ERP, like most companies might have SAP or SAP Business Objects or JD Edwards, so whatever software that you have or a custom software of ERP that you have to integrate it on the new entities. You have to integrate your customer relationship management software, your intranet, portals, custom solutions. So the idea is if you don't do it, it will create frustration, which always keeps growing, and you don't know which feather will break the camel's back. So start with technology integration. The next fix is about the execution and leadership. So mostly you have to focus on short-term execution targets, but you have to stay at the same time on long-term goal-oriented approach. So you are all the time focusing, delivering short-term targets, but you are not forgetting that you have a long-term objective to attain, and you are moving closer to your long-term objective. And another best practice that is a very good quick fix is reverse mentoring. So across geographies, across generations, you take people, younger generations, they mentor experienced executives, and vice versa. And a lot of this time, it helps in having fun, creating the team spirit, and also create the culture that you need to grow for the next months after the integration project is over. With that, I let Manuela continue.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue with the 7 ways to build constructive M&As. So first of all, conciliate the cross-cultural linguistics, which are linguistics, distance yourself from your own filters, conciliate the group corporate culture with the culture of the subsidiary culture. Listen, that would be number 2. Yeah, that is, well, I guess one of the main constructive one. Integrate, do not absorb. The other one may not want to be eaten. course, recognize culture, synergies, and differences. When looking at deals, it's easy to ignore little differences in company cultures because it's not something you can quantify. Understand also the value added. When acquiring a company, understand where the new company is adding value. Communicate with all shareholders, communication, and last and least, add a culture strategy to the global strategy and the business plan. Here we are with the constructive ones. What about our conclusion, Mithun?
Thank you, Manuela. I would really start about the change management part. So you really have to start with aligning the top team. You need an aligned team. Then you move to building the culture. You have to start building the target culture, the new culture of the entity, and then you have to focus on a strategy that is creating a joint ambition. What used to be the ambition of each of the teams, each of the individual organizational entities, and what is the ambition to be together? It's really important to focus on this point, because if you don't have an ambition, don't have a shared ambition, you don't have the buy-in of people. So you need a buy-in at all levels, and it starts with strategy. A lot of times strategy stays in the ivory towers between the top management, and it's not communicated across levels to the operational employees. And you need this ping pong, this exchange from the top to the bottom and bottom to the top. Or if you say it's a bottom up strategy, you take the strategy which is provided by the employees who are really at operational roles, and they might have better strategies to suggest. Then you adapt your operating model, develop new model, what is the target model, and that will deliver you synergies. So synergies is what is created after a whole complete approach, and not just one step that you are doing. So Manuela, please share what would you like to share about the change management?
Well, I wanted to share with you Kale and Sinka, who brought out in 2012 approach to post-acquisition integration, a structure which you have the structural integration and the degree of coordination of activities, and the high coordination you have, you can either have no integration or absorption. So it really gives you the idea where, if you need integration, or if you what kind of degree of coordination of activities you have. Tell me. It also goes down, obviously, to what the values of management methods and head office, transpose them in the subsidiaries. So if you have it all together, 100%, or it comes to two cultures, so that the degree of activities or coordination really gives you an idea to go or not. So what about the rest? The final conclusion we found, Mithun. Tell us all about.
When deciding upon the adequate degree of integration and coordination level, you have to consider them through the prism of the company strategy, target organization, and the culture decisions. Don't forget the culture. It's built along the program. It's not decided at the beginning. It should something which should be open and evolving. What do you think, Manuela?
Definitely, yes. I mean, these are the three elements we need, I guess, to go ahead. The final is really the human, the big H human. Go ahead and listen to them and integrate and go with them and work with them. as the coach, that's what I see at least.
Great. So, Linda, do you have questions that have been waiting? Let's move to the questions.
I certainly do. So I'll maybe group a couple of these together, which is we're coming back and still asking the question of how do you define failure in mergers and acquisitions? And can you confirm or not, maybe, is it true that more mergers fail than acquisitions? I'll start with that one and give you a second to answer, and then we'll come back to the next one. Or would you like me to give you all the questions first?
No, I think we'll answer one by one. So okay. I would answer the failure is failure can be defined as what was expected within the merger decision. So whenever you are taking a decision, you are about merging or acquiring an entity, you have an objective. So you have to be very clear about what is the target objective, like what kind of new customers do you want to achieve, what kind of new technologies do you want to achieve, what kind of new market do you want to acquire, what was the cost of operation at the beginning, what is the cost of inaction. So if you don't do anything, what would you lose? So all those topics you have to define at the beginning, and then you might have to wait a couple of years after the merger and see what is the current situation. Did you deliver what was proposed and what was talked about during the deal? So the deal document is extremely important, and the objectives of the deal, and have they been achieved. So for me, that failure is purely based on your objectives, and something which is not in the deal is the human aspect. So if you have created a great profitable organization, but you have an extremely toxic culture, people don't feel like they belong to this company, they don't feel like working, but they're still delivering profits, I think it's still a failure. So I think it should be objectives and the human integration of the company, how people feel about working for this newly integrated company, and where do they see that they're going. About the next part of the question, I think mergers. I agree to this point. I think more mergers fail than acquisitions, because in acquisition you have a lot of organized integration management that happens from mostly the company acquiring, which is a bit difficult in a dialogue between two companies merging, which have more or less the same size, and the integration management office is more slow in working. So I agree with the comment.
And I would like to add, from an HR point of view, you always can see the failure also on turnover. How much turnover on HR side is given on this moment. So,
exactly, yeah, very true. And a lot of companies, when they're acquiring, they think that we will get the best people, we'll acquire this entity and we'll get great talented people into the new company. But actually what happens is that after the deal is announced, I have seen so many acquisitions where the best talents, they were moved internally to other positions, to other departments, so that they would stay in that older entity, and the people they wanted to get rid of were moved to the company, the part of the company which would be sold, or which would be sold to the acquirer. And so you think that you'll get the best people by this acquisition, but sometimes you just get people who would not serve to your purpose of your organization. So they're more like rotten apples. You get, and your whole basket of fresh apples might get rotten just due to a few rotten apples that came. So think about it. It's a tricky decision. It's a success of a merger and acquisition is completely personalized. It depends on each merger, so we can't define a clear definition of failure. But yeah, I think we did talk about it. Can we move to the next question?
Yeah, well, there's a question that comes from this one, which is precision on failure. Are you going to say then that all deviation from the first objective is a failure?
I think it's, again, you have to, it's all context based. It's I would say, if you have seen people who do audits, so if you do an audit with exactly, you take the questions, you exactly look for responses in black or white, and if it's a, and then you give the points. With this kind of audit, you will get an audit result, but which might not be very favorable or very fair to the organization. So you have to see what you are comparing with what, and if the situation needs to be adapted. So for example, you have been having a merger and you have the economic situations change completely for the kind of products, or the technology changed. There was a big boom in some new technology which completely disrupted your industry. So with that, your objectives should be adapted, and you have to take the time to say that everything is not white or black. You have to think about, you have to compare it to the context. What do you think, Manuela?
No, I totally agree. I think the time is running. I think Linda is waiting for us. So.
Hi, yes, a few things. I have launched the end of webinar feedback, but I do have a couple of points that I think it could be interesting for you to talk about. I'm sorry to anyone who asked a question that we're not going to be able to get to, but we had the comment, doesn't the duration of integration depend on the size of the scope of the mergers and acquisition? And I'm going to add to that the question of, can you give examples of the values? When you talked about 3 good values, what would they be, Mithun?
So when you do a values workshop, I have seen so many organizations that have written values on their badges or on their walls, and actually all the employees, if you do a workshop, if you ask them what are their values, what do they think, what does the company mean to them, they don't really live by the values. So by doing the workshop, it means you try to list all the values that each team thinks that their value is, and then you try to merge what is the common value, what is the value that would be that would determine the future of the company. What is the value which will give the results that they are aiming for. So I have a few values which I see very commonly is trust, sharing, then resilience. That's one value I keep seeing in these value workshops. But I think you can always say, okay, if it's resilience, what kind of behavior, what kind of actions do you see if you are resilient in the day-to-day basis? And this detailed list of behaviors has to be defined by the teams. It's not somebody from outside coming to dictate. It's the collaborative co-creation of what are the commonly accepted values, and what do you, how do you translate it to actions through the whole organization, which might have many countries involved, many regional cultures involved, and many generational cultures involved. Yeah, Manuela, if you want to add something, please.
Oh yeah, you can add values, and the workshop is one of the best, obviously, working with teams together and to establish the common ground on how to work together and what is important for each of them. Yes, that is giving a basic, and it's worthwhile to invest these times. There's not a lot of times done, unfortunately, and a lot of coaches come in a lot of times too late when conflicts arises and conflicts are already installed, and it's definitely well, different or harder to move on out of these such situations. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put a close to this. We've gone just a little bit over time, so that's okay. I want to say thank you so much, Manuela and Mithun. It's been a very good, flowing, sharing kind of webinar. It's been a pleasure. I want to remind everyone who's still on before you log off that our next webinar will be on the 16th of July at 6 p.m. with Ursula Brinkman, talking about from clashes to creativity and team readiness for culturally diverse teams. I want to thank you very, very much for being here. It was a pleasure, and see you soon, I hope. Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure for us. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Take care. It was great. And if you still have questions, feel free to connect with us through email or by LinkedIn. Feel free, and I'm looking forward to all the discussions.
Thank you.